right, so welcome back to Into the Abyss. And actually, we want to clarify something that Chuck said earlier. We are going to be experimenting with a new format here pretty soon. There's a couple of things that we want to do. Again, we don't necessarily do this for the thousands of views and the monetization and things like that.
But we would like it.
But we are looking.
We're also lazy.
We're always looking for ways to try to streamline it, make it more efficient. We're trying a new program tonight, so we have a slightly different new camera angle.
There's a little banner up there.
Yeah, exactly.
You can actually book.
see. Yeah,
There you go.
They're not selling their books or anything.
No, but if you were to happen to buy one,
we'd all be very happy. We're also going to be experimenting with some live broadcasts here pretty soon. So we're trying to find ways to, even as we're all have our own busy schedules, to make sure we're producing content. But anyway,
because we like you, but not that much.
we're not that into you.
It's a fling.
So one thing we started talking about for tonight's show, though, is Tom, I want you to actually flesh it out for everyone, the thoughts you were having before the show.
Flesh is such a good word.
No, well, I'll flesh it up as much as I can then.
Flesh it out.
I mentioned this before. Now, I like going on horror YouTube sites. Mr. Nightmare is obviously the best, but there's so many more. You have animated horror movies. You have these people able to submit their stories, and they submit them to the YouTube owner, and they relay them, that sort of thing. And one thing I was thinking about was how many ideas that Hollywood is now getting for their horror movies from these online forums. Now, I should have looked this up first. It was just something that popped into my mind. You know us. We just think of it and we pop it out. So there was a movie of a.
No comment.
Oh, get your minds out of the gutter. Anyways, there was that movie of a kind of a demon woman who comes out in the dark. Only the light drives her away, and it's all scary. And I know they definitely got that from a short video that was on YouTube. It was a really good one too. Now, I'm also looking at the upcoming horror movies, one called Willy's Wonderland, starring Nick Cage.
It looks like a very Nick Cage movie.
And so. Chuck mentioned it's definitely a ripoff of Five Nights at Freddy's, but there's also, and I'm pretty sure it was on Mr. Nightmare, someone made a very long story of someone who was hired to clean up at Chuck E. Cheese, and unfortunately the Chuck E. Cheese robot was coming alive to kill him. It turned out the manager hired him as a sacrifice.
Also, very much a Five Nights at Freddy's copy.
So yeah, I think maybe that was a rip-off sort of Five Nights at Freddy's. A few things. First of all, I really hope if these studios get their ideas from these people online, that they're adequately compensating them. Okay. Well, I mean, the best example, which also might have been a bad idea, was Slender Man. Like, Slender Man was.
Well, Slender Man is hard to, nobody really knows who came up with Slender Man. It was like, so.
I mean, at this point, they might know who, but it took on a life of its own.
Right.
So lots of people were generating.
So that was like, and that was a really good example, again, of kind of this group think. You know, I never saw the movie. I heard some people say it wasn't very good.
Well, I'm waiting for like a Jeff the Killer one, or what is it? The Psycho Babysitter one. It's like FBI's Most Wanted. Maybe it's not a bad idea. I mean, you have some actual good ideas coming from people around the world.
Yeah, well, I just mentioned we did talk about Channel Zero in the other segment.
Channel Zero.
And that's based on creepypastas. And so that's the same idea. There's people creating these little micro stories online, and they're just taking from them and creating the full series or full movies out of them. And
the funny thing is, there's a generational thing here too, because I sort of know what creepypasta is, but I really don't know. I just the only reason why I even heard the term before is have students who like religiously read creepypastas, and I'm like, I don't even know what that is, or I'm a little too far over the curve.
It's like what Twitter is to Facebook is what creepypastas are to horror short stories. It's just a little snippet of here's a creepy idea and a description. That's it. All done.
And it's interesting, Tom, and again, this is kind of a free-for-all discussion here. The question is, and I don't know if we can answer this now, but just put this out there. Is it really a case of Netflix or Hollywood stealing ideas, or is it part of, and I'm going to use a big word here and probably use it incorrectly. So many things become part of, especially in today's society. This is a, for better, for good or for ill, this is a media saturated society, a social media saturated society. Everyone's on Twitter, on Facebook, in the cloud, you know, and all these stories are out there too. So you wonder if it's less a matter of, oh, okay, Hollywood ripped off this idea. All these ideas are becoming part of this cultural zeitgeist, you know, and like you make like I don't know if it's a matter of Hollywood ripping off these ideas, but it's almost like these ideas have been repeated so many times or shared across social media, like Slenderman.
Yep.
They've almost become part of this weird public domain, you know. And like I don't even know if they even consciously. I would be surprised if they even consciously are like, oh, we're taking this story from here. I wonder if it's more like they came up with this story. They're not even sure where they got it from. Like
that may be the case sometimes, but one thing I noticed with creepypastas is they remind me a lot of the kinds of creepy tales you tell around the campfire. There's not a big setup, there's not a big backstory, stuff like that. It's just, here's this idea, something that unnerves you, it shocks you a little bit, and then that's it, and it leaves you a bit disturbed. I almost wonder if there's just kind of, creepypastas are, you know, the new version of the campfire story, and we're kind of cutting out the middleman, because the campfire stories, one person tells it. I mean, at some point, somebody made it up, and then it gets shared because someone else liked it, and then they share it. And then slowly over time, someone else remembers it a little differently or adds in a little something to it. So people kind of build it up, and then it just passes around campfire to campfire. Very similar, but at a much, much faster rate. You have these creepypastas appearing online. Someone shares them, and then people just pass it around. You know, share it on Twitter, share it on Facebook, and all that. You might be cutting out the middleman where, you know, now in 6 months it takes off and somebody in Hollywood notices it, versus back in the old days, you know, there's a lot of campfire type stories that go into things like, you know, Alfred Hitchcock type stories and things like that. So you almost wonder if it's just, you know, the same old thing, just in fast forward.
Well, I mean, I just think Hollywood should look at what normal people come up with these ideas
and pay them.
And well, yeah, I mean, first of all, pay them. Don't be a jerk where you simply rip them
don't
off.
Also too don't generalize necessarily Hollywood, because I think thanks to streaming platforms, it's much bigger than Hollywood now.
Well, we use the term Hollywood like we use the term Wall Street. It's not there.
Because when I think of, like, I'm thinking like Netflix, so many, Amazon Prime. It's much bigger than Hollywood anymore.
And maybe I'm thinking maybe some more horror anthologies, because I think the thing with Slenderman was it was just not strong enough to stand on its own as a movie. But if you had, like, say, 3 different stories in this anthology, I think that would work out. I mean, sometimes they work, like Stephen King's Cat's Eye. That might be a way to go.
All right.
I mean, if you think you can make a Hollywood property out of a Stephen King story, I mean, give it a try. I don't know if anyone's ever done it before.
I don't know if they're going to buy a Stephen King story.